Fuel up your car and cooler at Fleetway this football season.
Let's go.
All right, good morning. Welcome in. The Out of Bounds Show is driven by the Jeep Grand Cherokees and Ram trucks at Mack Hike in Flowood, mackhikeflowood.com. Pre-owned and new Ram trucks, Jeep Grand Cherokees. You're listening to ESPN 105.9 The Zone. We welcome in Chris Doering, All-American at Florida. You can see him and find him on the SEC Network every week throughout football season. And CD joins us on the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale guest line. All right, CD, I think we're on the same page, at least somewhat, that the last thing you want to do in any sport, but in college football, is continue to flip the building, so to speak, because it puts you behind. And you don't get any continuity and so on. However, Mullen, this thing has gone off the rails. I think if anybody can get it back on, it is him. You're a Gator. Give me your kind of state of the state of where we are right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Obviously, it's not where you want to be, but I feel like there's a pretty good amount of equity built up over the last 3 seasons, given that Dan Mullen came in and inherited a 4-7 football team from Jim McElwain and turned them into back-to-back-to-back New Year's Six bowl teams. So, you know, to think that all of a sudden, you know, the guy forgets how to coach or forgets how to call plays, or it doesn't make sense to me. So there are certainly some things that need to be corrected, but I'm with you. I think, you know, I've regarded Dan Mullen as one of the best play designers, play callers in game that there is in college football over the last couple seasons. And so when you have somebody like that, you know, that's something to build on. Not to mention the fact that I think he understands the culture of Florida football and has had some success here. So to me, it's just about making tweaks, making it known that this is a season that becomes a do or die in 2022. But, you know, I think like in any other job or industry, like, you know, I think Gator fans especially, hold themselves to a different, hold Dan Mullen, hold the coach at the University of Florida to a different level of expectation than we would in any other job. As a boss, you know, I own other companies. I speak to my employees. I tell them that the performance is not up to the level of my expectation. I have, you know, a mutual plan put in place for what we're going to do to get back on track. And then if things don't work out, then you make a move. But to overreact right now in the midst of this season, I think would be unfair to, you know, Dan Mullen. And I think it would also be a detrimental move for Florida themselves to start back over again without there being any sort of clear-cut home run hire that you're going to go get that's going to immediately make you better than what you are now. I just think is irresponsible.
Chris Doering, CD, on the Out of Bounds Show with the SEC Network, talking Mullen and the Gators. You know, we followed Mullen every week, every game for years here. And he had some ups and downs, but most successful coach in Mississippi State's history. The one thing that didn't happen, CD, is his team never quit on him. And I don't know if that happened or not last weekend. But when somebody has maybe said that to you or text you that within the last few days, do you think the team has quit on him, or no, they just had a terrible performance?
Well, you mentioned, you know, what people text me, and my phone blows up on Saturday nights when Florida doesn't do well, from, you know, good friends that are Gator fans to casual folks to opponents that want to rub it in. So it's a lot of activity that's going on my phone between text messages and Twitter and everything else. But I had a friend that said, you know, those guys, they look like they completely quit. I don't blame them given the season they're having. I said, of course I blame them. Like, you're a college football player. You get 4 or 5 years to come out and play 12 games a season, man. It's an incredibly special opportunity to get to do what these kids get to do. And maybe they don't have the foresight, or maybe they don't have the maturity to appreciate it in the midst of it at times. But I think, you know, being able to put on that uniform, and especially getting to go play in an environment like Williams-Brice Stadium on a Saturday night, it doesn't get much better than that. So, you know, I find it hard to believe, given what I said earlier, that Dan Mullen inherited a team in his first season that went 4-7 the year before, largely a roster made up of guys he didn't recruit, that he had no relationship with, and turned them into a 10-win football team. That means that he's able to connect with the guys, and I just have a hard time believing that he's not able to do that now. There were a lot of stories around last week about the flu hitting the team and them being depleted in numbers and practice time. Maybe that has something to do with their performance on Saturday night. But, this was a record, a roster, a schedule that I thought got much easier in November, and I expected them to win all 4 of the football games. And then you're looking at an 8-14 that goes to a bowl game and maybe wins 9 games, and you evaluate how the season finished, and maybe you find a quarterback, maybe you find some rhythm on offense that you can build upon going into 2022. But losing to South Carolina, a team that's depleted in scholarship athletes, that's down to their third-string quarterback and getting not only beaten but blown out, that leads me to believe that anybody left on the roster, short of Stanford this week, is capable of beating Florida. With Missouri, a trip to Columbia coming up, and having to play Florida State at home, Florida is not immune from losing another game. So if they don't get their stuff back on track, then you could see something drastic happen and some sort of illustration of the team maybe quitting on their head coach.
Chris Doering on the Out of Bounds show and the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale guest line. So I thought he handled himself well on Monday. I watched all 24 minutes of the press conference. They were taking shots left and right, all that. He handled himself well. Now, prior to that, he missed a little bit, kind of a PR nightmare, if you will. Were you surprised that he said what he said about recruiting, and it went, I guess, maybe as viral as it did, and the fan base got as upset as they did, CD?
Well, the recruiting thing has been a point of sensitivity around here for the last couple of years, and Florida fans expect the same sort of success on the field and on the recruiting trail that Alabama has every year, and that Georgia has had of late. Like, it's not necessarily realistic. So to compare yourself to them is going to leave you feeling a little underwhelmed constantly. So the recruiting thing was something that fans had talked about and complained about, the staff's inability to recruit at a high level. With that being said, the last 3 years, signing classes have not been terrible. I think we're talking about like a number 7 class, a number 9 class, a number 12 class, not where Florida wants to be necessarily, but not exactly horrible. Now, I do think Florida needs to recruit better on the lines of scrimmage, particularly the defensive line. That's a spot of I think, weakness when it comes to evaluating the roster. They've got to find a way to keep the top talent in state as well. Georgia, Alabama, Clemson all coming in and taking some of the top players from high school year in and year out. So they've got to find a way to put the wall up around the border again. But the reason that the recruiting thing, I think, struck him so badly was, remember, he's got a show cause dating back to being put on NCAA probation from a violation a couple years ago. That rolled over from last year to this year due to the pandemic. When he asked him about what's going on in recruiting originally during the bye week, he didn't get into it much, and I imagine that has to do with wanting to avoid that talk of not being able to go out and recruit like every other head coach can during the bye week. And then after losing, I can see you, man, losing to Georgia, having the kind of season you are. Do you want to necessarily answer questions about recruiting in the middle of the season? I don't, but I think he could have handled it better. And you know this, Bo. You've been around the guy for a long time. He doesn't have the greatest sense of awareness sometimes. I mean, last year after the Texas A&M loss, he said we needed to pack the swamp in the middle of a global pandemic, only to get tested positive for COVID himself a couple days later. He showed up wearing a Darth Vader costume after inciting a brawl in the middle of the Missouri game last year. So dealing with the media, having awareness of being able to read the room has not always been his strong suit. Somebody obviously talked to him before the press conference on Monday, whether it was Scott Strickland or Megan Mullen. Somebody got to him and said, hey, you're not doing yourself any favors here. Let's address things. Let's be a grown-up. Let's treat the media like they're our friends instead of our enemies, and turn it into something we can use as a positive instead of something that's going to linger for a long period of time. And I'm with you. I thought he did a good job. If we're going to complain about all of the bad media appearances, we need to give him praise when the good ones show up too, and I thought he did a nice job on Monday.
Gator All-American under Steve Spurrier, now with the SEC Network. Chris Doering, CD, joins us on the Out of Bounds show. All right, this is a little bit of a slippery slope, so you can go whatever direction you want here. All right, recruiting. You look at what Kirby and Saban are doing. Jimbo has moved A&M into the top 5. And then you got LSU and Ohio State. But really, you've got you've got Bama and Georgia, and then it's kind of a drop, and then a couple other teams. And I think there's a huge gap between, like, number 2 and, like, number 7, what you were just referencing. Because right now, on 247 Sports Composite, the Gators have the 7th best talent in the country. I don't know if Florida or Dan Mullen, because Florida prides themselves on being a top 10 public university and somewhat being above the fray in what happens now when it comes down to throwing down in the streets for top prospects. I don't think Mullen is ever going to be as aggressive as Kirby, Saban, Jimbo. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not. I mean, it's a full-time job, man. Recruiting is obviously the lifeblood of college football, but it requires a lot of attention. And, God, I couldn't imagine having to do that as a grown-ass man kissing the butt of 18 to 22-year-old kids,
Amen.
16, 17, 18-year-old kids, and parents that think their kid's the next best thing and the entitlement that they have. Like, I wouldn't want to do that job. And so I think that's part of the reason why I have – hunches at some point in time he's probably going to want to go to the NFL if he has that opportunity. I mean, just the lifestyle of a college coach takes a unique person these days. With that being said, like I don't necessarily agree with recruiting to rankings either. I like evaluating talent based upon what I think is going to be a good fit for my scheme and what I believe I can develop. But I do think in college football these days, there's 3 positions that you have to recruit really well at. It's the offensive line, it's the defensive line, as I mentioned ago, and it's at the quarterback spot. A year ago, Florida was primed to have a tremendous season because they had a veteran quarterback surrounded with some really good talent, and that can mask a lot. Heading into this season, she was on the other foot between the Georgia and Florida dynamic. Georgia was returning not only 1 veteran quarterback, but 2, and Florida was starting all over again with a couple guys that had never made a collegiate start. That's going to hurt you. You look around the top teams in the country, it really is all about quarterback play. So Florida, I think, has to figure out who their guy is going forward, try to manage that quarterback position in terms of recruiting and keeping them on the roster as best as possible and try to create some continuity going forward. And that's one of the reasons why that they hired Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen was brought in because they were looking for the ability to win games, doing it with offensive flair,
Sure.
and developing the quarterback. And that's exactly what Dan Mullen was known for, and that's exactly what he's done. Now, all of a sudden, everybody wants to say, oh, he's not a great recruiter. Well, you had a great recruiter in Will Muschamp. Will Muschamp is maybe the quintessential great recruiter, and you ran him out of town because you weren't winning enough games or weren't winning the right way. So, I get sick of a lot of Florida fans, and I consider myself to be one of them. Having grown up here in Gainesville, probably gone to more games than most Florida fans. I donate more money than probably most Florida fans. I certainly spent more blood, sweat, and tears on the field than most Florida fans. But the entitlement that they have and what they believe is a possibility for their program in the midst of having to play against Nick Saban in the same conference and what you said Jimbo Fisher is creating and Kirby Smart, it's not going to be possible or realistic to win the SEC every single year. And you just made a great run last year. You went toe-to-toe with Alabama in the SEC championship game. I think Florida fans have to be a little more realistic right now about what the landscape of college football, particularly in the SEC, looks like.
I like it. CD on the Out of Bounds show. Let's switch gears. A&M at Ole Miss. What do you see? Who do you like and why?
Golly, you probably know I was as huge an Ole Miss fan as there could have been in the off season. I love Matt Corral and went on the record thinking that they were going to beat Alabama, which I still believe, if things go a little differently, it could have been a much more competitive game, but that's a story for another day. I hate what we've seen in the depletion of their roster over the last couple weeks, being down Jonathan Mingo for, as long as they've been out, and, Braylon Sanders just coming back, and Dontario Drummond being out and Matt Corral being banged up and not being able to use him as much in the run game as you probably would like leads me to believe that they're a little shorthanded and going into this game kind of in the opposite direction. A&M feels to me like a team that's surging at this point, figuring things out on offense, at least with their offensive line and their run game. Their defense is lights out. I would like to see more consistency from Zach Calzada, maybe regain some of that form from the the night in College Station against Alabama, but I wish I could see this Ole Miss team at full strength. At full strength, I'd be tempted to take them, but I don't know without really knowing what the health of the roster, particularly the offensive side, is going to be on Saturday.
All right. I don't know how many more times we'll get you between now and the SEC championship game. So let me just play out a couple of scenarios here real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia has not been challenged, CD. Bama has lost.
I don't like that narrative, by the way, Bo. I'm going to stop you there because I hear it every week. Every Sunday I wake up to texts about, oh, you guys stop slobbing all over Georgia. They haven't played anybody. They played everybody that's on the schedule, right? That's all you can do, and they've been dominant in every situation. I mean, you look around the country, there's a bunch of average teams, including the number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams in the college football playoff poll last night. It's Georgia and everybody else. And so I don't buy that, hey, they haven't played anybody. They're not that good a team. We'll see. Like, tell me who really creates a lot of strain for this Georgia team, particularly their defense. After watching Alabama's offense on Saturday night, do we really feel like it's going to put pressure on Georgia's defense? Do we feel like
all right, that was my question.
They're able to get there,
so
going to do it? Like, I don't buy all that, man.
All right, so and what I was saying is they haven't been challenged. Obviously, you're right. They've dominated everybody on the schedule. But having said that, depending on who gets there, Bama or A&M. Now, Bama has, it looks like, a better passing offense, right, than A&M. So you can't run on these guys.
When they can protect the football, I mean, like, look at the other night. Look at even dating back to the A&M game. They've had issues up front on the offensive line. Obviously, losing the center on Saturday hurt and having to slide over their tackle to the center spot and play them. But they are deficient on the offensive line, and they're deficient in their front seven. I think it's a bad recipe for matching up with Georgia.
Gotcha.
I think Georgia beats them by double digits.
Okay. I just didn't know. Look, Georgia's better. Georgia's going to be better Labor Day to Thanksgiving. I was just thinking a one-off, 3.5 hours in Atlanta. Bama's been there. The pressure will be on Georgia if you thought it would be close. Obviously, you're looking at a 2-possession game pretty much regardless of who makes it, whether it's Bama or A&M.
Yeah, I think it's a 2-possession game with anybody that makes it to Atlanta or anybody that makes it to the college football playoffs. That defense is as dominant as we've seen, and you're right. Who can run on that defense? You're not going to line up. You got to hit some big plays in the passing game. I'm excited to see what Tennessee can do in that way this week. I mean, I think that's one of the great stories of the SEC this season is what they've been able to do. Hendon Hooker, 21 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. Guys that can make plays down the field. If there is one deficiency, it's guys making plays in the secondary in one-on-one situations, and I think the secondary for Georgia doesn't always play the ball in the air as well as they could. But again, we're splitting hairs, so I think this is a great litmus test on Saturday in Knoxville for maybe what teams can do potentially. If Tennessee can't have any success, I don't know who has success this year offensively against them.
All right, we'll leave it there. Chris Doering, SEC Network. CD on the Out of Bounds show, and the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale guest line. Are you still having a blast every weekend?
Love it, man. It's the greatest job, second greatest job in the world next to playing. I love getting to do what I do, but I don't think there's any other teams out there in the market for a 48-year-old wide receiver, so I'm going to stick to what I got going now, man.
I love the chemistry. You, Chiswick, and Dari and Ben Watson, it's gold on Saturday night and Sunday morning. Keep up the good work, buddy. Talk soon.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it, man. See you.
See you, bud. CD, Chris Doering on the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale guest line, weighing in on Mullen, some A&M and Ole Miss. He favors A&M with Ole Miss being banged up, and he doesn't think that anybody can challenge Georgia within 2 possessions. So much for my maybe wishful thinking that Bama could get it together. He is right. Their talent. This is hard to believe. The way Bama recruits. They're talent deficient for Bama in the offensive and defensive lines.
Yeah. I mean, it just is what it is.
Wow.
Just proves the dynasty's over and Saban's past his
I'm
prime.
not going there. I don't know what,
He may never win another game.
Oh, gosh. New Mexico. Did you tell me New Mexico or New Mexico State? State. New Mexico State.
Yeah.
Not that any of our listeners know the difference
Not that
between
it
either one.
matters.
No. One of them is good in basketball, but who cares? All right. Well, dang. I mean, I'd like somebody. I want somebody to. I'm not anti-Georgia. I grew up a Georgia fan, but I want somebody to challenge because I want good games.
I think the part that to me is more interesting is not because I've been saying I don't think anybody can challenge them in the SEC. What I think is interesting is he said he thinks it would be a 2-possession game with anyone in the playoff.
So even Ohio State, because the only other team that we're really monitoring to challenge Georgia outside of maybe Bama or A&M in the SEC championship game is Ohio State.
Do you have any faith in Oregon?
No.
Really?
No.
I mean, they beat Ohio State at Ohio State.
First game of the year. No. That was many moons ago.
You just hate Joe Moorhead.
That's not true.
Why do you hate him so much?
You're putting words in my mouth. But
so Ohio, that to me is the part that stood out.
That's it. It's Ohio. So if that's the case, and Ohio State is good this year, but not like awesome for their standards. So Kirby has flipped this whole thing on everybody, landed the right players, the right 5 stars and 4 stars, because Bama signs them too. And
except they haven't hit at the QB position. They've just been so good at every other position.
He's going to do this with a solid quarterback. When was the last time a solid quarterback was able to lead a team to a national championship in college football? I mean, I know Nick Marshall was within 50 seconds, but it didn't happen.
That's a great question. So
Bryce Young last year was he played behind Mac Jones. Was Mac Jones solid?
I guess he technically was. I mean, he
solid
set a ton of records. I know part of that is how good their offense was.
Devontae Smith and all those dudes.
All right, so LSU was Burrow, Clemson was Lawrence, then Clemson before that was Deshaun. Who was 2017 Alabama? Was that Tua's walk-off?
When he did the walk-off on
Hurts,
Kirby Smart?
So would you say because Jalen Hurts got them all the way to that point, he was solid? I mean, I don't know. I mean, he's an NFL starter.
At the college level, he was really good.
He was once he got to Oklahoma, how really good was he at Alabama?
Okay, that's a good question.
I don't know. Okay, I mean, you had Ohio State winning with a backup quarterback.
That's it, Cardale Jones. But that was later in the – okay.
He only played the last 5 games.
Yeah. Okay. The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by the Philly cheesesteak sandwich at Roosevelt's at Live Oaks, liveoaksgc.com. Kyle Morris, who played quarterback at Florida and owns Live Oaks Golf Club. He'll join us at 9:35. Show is also presented by Havana Smoke Shop for all your premium cigars. 2 locations, I-55 North Jackson and across from Shaggy's at the Reservoir. Olivas, Liga Privadas, Fuentes, Havana Smoke Shop for all your game day sticks at Havana Smoke Shop.